Welcome back to the Book Echo. Today, we're exploring one of the most transformative books of our time, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. In this profound work, Tolle delves into the awakening of consciousness and how we can break free from the grip of the ego to create a more peaceful and fulfilling existence. Whether you're on a spiritual journey or simply curious about living more mindfully, this summary will offer deep insights to help you on your path. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more life-changing book summaries. Let's begin the summary now. Eckhart Tolle starts A New Earth by examining the core problem of human life, the ego. The ego is the false sense of self that we often identify with. It's the voice in our head that separates us from the present moment. Tolle believes that humanity's obsession with ego is the root cause of most suffering, conflict, and dysfunction in the world. As we begin to awaken to the idea that we are not the ego, but something far more profound, we open the door to true transformation. The book is about moving toward this awakening and finding a new consciousness, a shift that not only brings personal fulfillment, but also has the potential to change the world. Tolle begins by asking us to consider the plant. Think about a flower growing from the soil, effortlessly reaching towards the light. The flower doesn't struggle with identity, doesn't question its purpose. It simply is. Humans, however, have become entangled in a complex web of thought, constantly constructing stories about who we think we are. This is where the concept of the ego comes in. The ego, Tolle explains, is the voice in our heads that continually speaks of I and mine. It identifies with possessions, achievements, and failures, with roles we play in society, mother, teacher, boss, or friend. It convinces us that these external things define us. However, in doing so, we lose touch with our deeper though truer selves. The ego is always in search of something, never satisfied. It thrives on separation from others, from nature, and ultimately, from the present moment. Tolle believes that this ego-driven consciousness is what keeps us in a constant state of dissatisfaction, always wanting more, fearing loss, and creating endless conflict. This is the old way of being, the old earth. In contrast, A New Earth is about moving into a state of presence, one where we are no longer trapped by the ego's constant chatter. In the early part of the book, Tolle dives deeper into the mechanics of how the ego functions. One of the key points he makes is the ego feeds on identification. It clings to labels, opinions, and judgments. This is why we feel personally attacked when someone criticizes us, or why we feel superior when we compare ourselves to others. The ego is always in a state of comparison, either inflating itself with pride or shrinking in insecurity. But Tolle invites us to recognize something fundamental. We are not our thoughts. He often emphasizes this point by asking readers to notice the gap between thinking and awareness. When you become aware that you are thinking, who is the one doing the observing? That awareness, he argues, is the real you, the conscious presence beneath the constant stream of thoughts. It is from this place of awareness that we can begin to dismantle the ego and its grip on our lives. As you listen to these ideas, consider how often your thoughts are dominated by concerns about status, material possessions, or fear of judgment. Tolle isn't saying we should live without thoughts or desires, but that we should see these things for what they are, temporary, fleeting, and not part of our essential nature. As Eckhart Tolle continues in A New Earth, he challenges us to observe the ego not just in our thoughts, but in how it manifests in our daily lives. One of the most powerful ways the ego maintains control is through pain, specifically what he calls the pain body. The pain body, according to Tolle, is a kind of emotional baggage that everyone carries. It's the accumulation of old emotional wounds, both personal and collective. It feeds on negative emotions, anger, sadness, fear, and waits for opportunities to surface. Have you ever noticed how a small annoyance can sometimes trigger a disproportionate emotional reaction? That's the pain body coming to life. Tolle suggests that the pain body often uses these moments to take over, causing us to lash out or fall into despair. Tolle explains that the pain body thrives in the absence of awareness. When we're unconscious of its presence, we become its puppet, replaying old hurts and traumas, blaming others, and perpetuating cycles of negativity. The way out, he argues, is through presence, becoming aware of the pain body without identifying with it. When we can observe our pain body without reacting to it, we take away its power. This is a key aspect of the transformation Tolle envisions in A New Earth. By becoming conscious of the ego and the pain body, we begin to break free from the conditioned responses that keep us in a state of suffering. In this new state of consciousness, we stop identifying with our pain and start living from a place of inner peace. Tolle moves on to discuss the role of the present moment in breaking free from the ego. He emphasizes that the ego is always focused on the past or the future. It clings to memories of past successes and failures, or fantasizes about future achievements and anxieties. This constant time travel robs us of the present moment, which is the only place where life truly unfolds. The present moment, for Tolle, is sacred. It's where we find peace and joy, not through external circumstances, but through a deep inner stillness. He introduces the concept of being, which refers to the state of pure presence, of simply existing without needing to define, judge, or control anything. When we live in alignment with this state of being, the ego starts to dissolve, and with it, much of our suffering. To live in the present is to let go of resistance. Tolle argues that most of our suffering comes from resisting what is. We label situations as good or bad and fight against them, but in doing so, we create unnecessary suffering. When we accept the present moment as it is, without judgment, without trying to change it, we begin to experience a deeper sense of peace. In A New Earth, Tolle invites us to see every moment as an opportunity for spiritual practice. Whether you're stuck in traffic, dealing with a difficult colleague, or simply walking through a park, each moment offers a chance to connect with the present and observe the ego. This practice of presence slowly dissolves the ego's hold over us, creating space for a new consciousness to emerge. Tolle also explores how this shift in consciousness impacts our relationships. Much of the conflict in relationships, he argues, comes from two egos clashing, each person identifying with their desires, their fears, and their need to be right. Relationships, in this sense, become battlegrounds for the ego to assert itself. However, when we begin to live in presence, relationships transform. Instead of using the other person to feed our ego, we start seeing them as they are, without the projections of our own needs and insecurities. Relationships become less about fulfilling our egoic desires and more about deepening our connection to the present moment through another person. In this space, love flourishes, not as an attachment or need, but as a state of being. Tolle calls this shift in relationships conscious relationships. In conscious relationships, both partners are aware of their egos and their pain bodies, and don't allow these forces to dominate their interactions. Instead, they create a space for love, compassion, and true connection to arise. This kind of relationship is deeply fulfilling because it's based on mutual awareness and presence, rather than on the need to control or change the other person. As the book nears its conclusion, Tolle paints a vision of what a new earth could look like if more people embrace this shift in consciousness. He believes that humanity is at a crossroads. The ego-driven world has led to war, environmental destruction, and widespread suffering. But there is hope. By awakening to our true nature, by living in presence rather than ego, Tolle believes we can create a new earth, one rooted in peace, compassion, and collective well-being. He calls this awakening the flowering of human consciousness. It's not something that happens all at once, but rather a gradual process of becoming more aware, more present, and more aligned with our deeper purpose. This new earth begins within each of us, as we dismantle our egos and embrace the fullness of life in the present moment. In this sense, A New Earth is not just a spiritual guide, but a call to action. Tolle encourages us to practice presence in our everyday lives, to become aware of the ego's tricks, and to cultivate a deep connection to the present moment. It's through these small, individual shifts that we can collectively create a world that reflects our highest potential. In closing, Tolle leaves us with a profound reminder. The new earth begins with you. Every moment you spend in presence, every time you become aware of your ego, you are contributing to the awakening of humanity. It's a slow, often challenging process, but it's also the path to true freedom. By embracing presence, we open ourselves to a life filled with peace, joy, and deep, authentic connection with others. In A New Earth, Eckhart Tolle offers a profound exploration of the human ego and its grip on our individual and collective consciousness. Through his insights, Tolle invites us to examine the ways in which the ego operates in our lives, driving us to seek identity through external factors, status, material wealth, or the approval of others. But this identification with the ego brings suffering because it perpetually focuses on the past or the future, disconnecting us from the only reality that truly exists, the present moment. The central theme of the book is the idea of awakening to a new level of consciousness. This awakening begins when we become aware of the ego's hold on us and start to disentangle ourselves from its control. By observing our thoughts and emotions without becoming identified with them, we create space for what Tolle calls presence, a state of being that transcends the ego's illusions. A key concept in the book is the pain body, which Tolle describes as a reservoir of accumulated emotional pain. The pain body is activated by negative experiences, and it feeds on the energy of these emotions, creating cycles of suffering in our lives. Tolle encourages us to bring awareness to the pain body and dissolve it by staying present and non-reactive when it arises. The path to inner transformation is one of living in alignment with the present moment. Tolle emphasizes that our fixation on the past or future keeps us trapped in egoic thinking, robbing us of the peace and fulfillment that come from living fully in the now. By embracing the present and surrendering to what is, we dissolve resistance, end suffering, and find true peace. Tolle also discusses how this shift in consciousness transforms relationships. Many relationships, he says, are dominated by the ego, as each person seeks to fulfill their own needs through the other. But in a conscious relationship, both partners recognize their egoic tendencies and bring presence to their interactions, allowing for deeper, more authentic connections based on love, compassion, and mutual respect. Ultimately, A New Earth envisions a collective awakening where humanity moves beyond the ego-driven ways that have led to suffering, conflict, and environmental degradation. This new Earth, Tolle believes, is possible when individuals commit to living in presence, breaking free from the ego, and aligning their lives with the truth of who they really are, beyond the mind and egoic identity. As Tolle reminds us in closing, the transformation of the world begins with each of us. Every moment of presence we cultivate contributes to the birth of a new Earth, where peace, love, and deep connection flourish.